People ask me all the time what I mix Total ISO in. Honestly, I mix it with everything. Water, egg whites.
What the Jay?
Capone, Daisy.
Jay, seriously? Don't.
Hi, you guys. Dave Man Max 6. We are back on Jaytv. And Champ, we have another all-star guest today. I'm very excited to bring on the channel for the very first time. Steve, the King Snake Kuclo. Steve, welcome to Jaytv, man. Jay, I'm so glad you're here to do this.
Thank you, guys. Now, I've been a fan of both of you for a long time.
Ditto.
Big Steve King Snake. Yeah, I don't see you pushing the King Snake as much anymore.
A little bit. You know, there should, I think there'll be a return of the old King Snake. We're, you know, we've been doing a lot of focus stuff on with my wife and you know, everything we got going. But yeah, it's there. It's there, still strong.
Well, you're looking huge, bro. I know you're just recovering from you know, a competitive, I guess a shortened. You probably had a little shorter season than you probably like to right away. But I'll get into that. But what I wanted to ask you a little bit, you know, I've followed you for a long time. I remember when you were a teenager coming up. What I didn't realize is I believe you went to Teen Nationals 3 times. But prior to that, you were a hockey player. I had Dave kind of research a little bit, and I know we got some images of that. But talk a little bit about your upbringing, what kind of led you to bodybuilding, because not a lot of people get to see that, especially some from you newer guys that didn't have a lot of magazine exposure to kind of talk about the early upbringing, which I think tells a lot about a person as we transition into this and in the mindset, and even the people that do competitive sports or they're disciplined in something that allows us, because we're a rare breed when we get focused on bodybuilding, right? And I see you living it day in, day out. So maybe talk a little bit about those early beginnings in the hockey career.
I think I think background's definitely in athletics. Growing up, I played baseball, hockey, it was kind of from a young age. I think about 6 was the first time I got on skates. And then I played football in high school, but hockey was my sport. I felt that I excelled the most in. And a lot of that did carry into bodybuilding. But the athletic side, I think a lot of guys get into bodybuilding that they just kind of want to get bigger and they really don't come from an athletic background. And I know you did too, Jay. And I know that I think that has helped my career in sports, in bodybuilding, to stay healthy, number one. And I get a lot of my strength and agility, you know, I think stems from my athletic background. But starting at 6, getting on skates, and then that pretty much, I ran it and had a great career. A lot of guys I played with and against ended up in NHL. One of the guys in the pictures I sent you guys is currently still playing, Steve Oleski, a good friend of mine. And we played together probably about 8 years of my my hockey career as defense partners. We were, you know, defensive guys on our team. We ended up doing some really big things, won states like 3 or 4 times, won at big international tournament silver sticks that put us every year that stick gets put in the Hockey Hall of Fame. And so our stick that when we won it ended up in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Pretty cool little fact. And then the pictures I sent you was from 2001 and when we won nationals, and that kind of was one of the pinnacles, definitely in my hockey career. So
yeah, I mean, you were in Michigan at the time. Like, you grew up in Michigan, right?
Correct.
Your family still resides there. I know you promote a show out there now, but your roots stem from there. And, you know, I'm an East Coast guy, so everyone was kind of into hockey too. It seems like as we get closer to Canada, everyone's like doing the hockey thing, right?
Yeah, where it's colder, longer, there's ice, there's you know, we got hockey.
Did you ever, were you competitive? I mean, what was your mindset? Because you don't seem like, I know hockey's really aggressive, right? There's a lot of things going on. I just don't see that in you, but I see when you train, like, you're one of the strongest bodybuilders, and I think you've actually backed off some of your heaviest lifts. I used to see you squatting like crazy amount of weights. I mean, we can get into your best lifts because I know all the the viewers want to sometimes hear like a bodybuilder's best lifts, but talk about like, I don't see you as aggressive, but you know, how did you react when you were a player?
I was a more aggressive player. I wasn't a hothead temper kind of guy, but I knew I had strength because I loved training too when I played sports. So that kind of what led me into my bodybuilding career. But I loved being the kind of real physical, you know, and that's the side of hockey that I loved. I love hitting. That's why I love football, and that kind of I was able to harness that aggression into, you know, when I needed to use it. I wasn't a guy that just went out and fight, you know, in school and on the streets and stuff, but I was able to, you know, utilize my strength and focus in it. And I'm able to do that when I train now. You know, when I train, I put a lot of aggression into that set, and I'm able to kind of get done with it. And I'm like a happy-go-lucky guy like you normally see me. So, yes, I was definitely on more the physical side, but not a super hothead that would just do stupid things, you know. So I learned a good balance there.
Wow. And what made you transition into you said you transitioned into bodybuilding? Like when did you actually start following it? Let me ask you this, who was the first bodybuilder like that I know I saw a certain bodybuilder, but I followed certain guys. So maybe talk about the first time you actually picked up maybe a magazine or whatever at that time, and then who you kind of followed or mimicked as a teenager.
I think we all had a love for Arnold at the time, you know, seeing him, watching Pumping Iron, all that kind of stuff. But I'm going to have to go a little fanboy on you, Jay, and say that I was a huge fan of you coming up, because I really started following the Olympias late 90s and early 2000s. And the battle of you and Ronnie during that time, I remember, you know, it was pay-per-view. And I remember we'd get a group of us that were like diehards from the gym, and we all actually meet at one of our houses, and we'd buy the pay-per-view. And man, it was freaking awesome watching you and Ronnie go at it. And that was probably you were probably the guy that I looked up to the most, kind of starting my career and modeled a lot of my training and like a physique I really admired. And I would have to say that, you know, watching you, and I always thought like I had to be Jay Cutler before I ever stepped on stage, but, you know, taking the step of faith as a teenager, getting on stage and competing, but always having, you know, you were probably the role model that I followed most in the sport as a guy that did great on stage, off stage, and did you know, things that made it a true business and a sport.
So talk about the teen nationals. Like you went, you know, you won probably everything in Michigan you could do to qualify, right? And how many times at the teen nationals, Steve? Did I read 3 times?
2. Did it twice.
You won 2 years in a row, but I thought the first one maybe you just placed third in a show or whatever. But yeah, right. You won 2 years at teen nationals. I remember hearing about you back then. You know, back-to-back wins there, and obviously as a heavyweight. Did they have super heavy back then, or was that?
I don't know. Actually, the first time I did it, there wasn't a super heavyweight, and the second year was when Trey Brewer actually did it. And okay. He was a super heavyweight, I believe. So yeah, I did it as a heavyweight. I won my division both years. The first year it was Jason that won the overall, I think. But I was it was him and I kind of battling it out. I think he was a light heavyweight at the time. And then the second year, Gerald, I can't think of his last name. Good guy. He kind of competes a little bit here and there, but not. I know.
Talking about you.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. He won the overall, but both years I won my division and kind of, you know, was on the map back then, you know, and there wasn't Facebook and Instagram. It was Chad's forum, Muscle Mayhem, and a lot of those forums kind of that all of us communicated and had our own little world that we were at, you know.
And when did you decide you wanted to, you were like, I want to be a professional bodybuilder? Because I knew exactly when I made that decision. I took a trip to California. I got to train in the Mecca. Yeah. And I said, man, once I saw the lifestyle, I was like, this is what I want to do. Like, when did you won 2 years in a row. So obviously you knew you had a future to do it. And your family was supportive. I know your mom is like your biggest cheerleader, and, you know, there's a lot of people in your corner, but, when did you kind of decide, like, hey, I want to keep going with this and transitioning from a teenager to a men's open winner?
I'm gonna say probably right around then. I knew I kind of had something, like you said. You know, you get some attention. You have some sponsors reach out. Back in the day, I think Muscle Tech was my first sponsor, and Jay was a Muscle Tech guy too. So I was like, okay, things are lining up. But in the next year, I was when I turned 20 to 21, right around that age. I did a local level show. It was a pro-am show, and all the IFBB judges there, Mr. Weinberger, Mr. Mannion, Mr. Udit, all the guys were there that were the IFBB judges, and I ended up winning the overall at 20 years old as a super heavyweight, and that's when they first kind of really got eyes on me as, okay, this guy's got a potential career. And then from there was pursuing, you know, the national level shows for a handful of years, the USA's and nationals, and then finally winning the USA's in 2011 at 25. That's at that point I knew, okay, let's really start kind of transitioning, you know, my career. I was a firefighter medic at the time, and I knew, okay, we're going to have to eventually be all in on this and not just try to manage a handful of things and pursue the career as a professional. So I think it was a gradual transition for me to make sure I had stability in my life, not just be like, I'm going to be all in on this, and if it doesn't work out, I was screwed. So I kind of, you know, played both as a firefighter medic and bodybuilder. And eventually, maybe about 4 years ago is when I really decided we're going to be all in on this and say, you know, I'm able to live off what I do in the sport.
So
Yeah,
no
and
more firefighting right now, Steve? No more?
No, I'm still on the city. Like, I still have my position with the city as like you know, because I didn't necessarily just drop all my certs and everything. I kept everything, but you know, currently, no, not working.
Okay, I didn't know that. Okay.
He took the position, Larry. Just, you know, I had an assistant that worked with me, and he just got on the fire department as a medic. He's super excited about it. He's in his rookie probation right now, and you know how that is. So he's like cooking all the food at the firehouse and all that stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But, you know, you ended up in Dallas. You know, that's where you took the first job, right? And now you're training out there. You have all different gyms you train at. I see your Instagram stuff. And, you know, you've won, you know, the Arnold Brazil, and you've won the St. Louis a couple times. I mean, there's a lot of shows that you've done really well at. But, you know, you're on the big stage now. And, I mean, you did, you know, the Arnold recently, the Olympia. You've had great showings. You're moving up. And I was saying to Dave when we wanted to book you for the show, I said, you know, this is a guy that I've kind of been rooting for to be like the guy, you know, to be the next thing. And I mean, I thought even when you turned pro in 2011, like, this guy is going to, you know, he's one of the bigger guys and going to do some damage. And you know, you've been kind of picking and choosing each show. How do you decide, like, where you're at now? Like, okay, these are the contests I'm going to commit myself to and focus on, you know, especially when you're placing in the top 6 of pretty much everything you do, fifth, whatever. Was to win the Mr. Olympia. Let's be realistic about it. But, like, what makes your decision at this point? Is there around the business that you have going on? Because I see your stuff and you're very focused on the business side. And I want you to talk a little bit about that balance, because I think that's a hard question for a lot of people. Just like you said, I stepped away from the firefighting to focus on real life business. And I want to hear your take on it, because I know how I handled it.
Okay, well, that multiple part question, starting with the shows. I think, you know, how I now pick shows. I think it's hard to be you can't be ultra strategic on saying, I'm going to do a show that nobody does. I just want to go and hopefully, you know, be the favorite in the win. Because if you do that, I think, you know, eventually there's going to be kind of law of averages go against you, where the show you think nobody's going to show up, everybody shows up. Like this year, kind of the thought was nobody's going to show up at the Arnold, and it was a stacked lineup, you know. So you know, I don't look at shows that way. I look at, like, okay, you know, a little bit of how am I going to line up shows with what I have going on in life with business and promoting and all that kind of stuff that we're doing as well. But, you know, I think I took a lot of advice from my dad on that. My dad's, he's one of those guys, you know, either you're first or last, or, you know, it's time to really run with the big boys. And, you know, when I start placing in the top 10 at Olympia, he's like, listen, you're there. you got to be doing the big shows. You got to be doing the Arnold. You got to do the Olympia every year. You got to just prove yourself that you can hang with these guys at the top. Like I'd say the A tier, the top 5 guys. Okay, when you sneak into there, you got to start doing the big boy shows on the regular. You know, it's the Arnold. I remember seeing you at the Arnold because I think the Arnold was the first time I ever really saw you on stage as a fan of the sport and watching you compete. Because being in Michigan and driving down to Ohio, I was probably in the early 2000s, you were going there on a regular basis. So I've been going to the Arnold for probably over 15, 16 years on a regular. But seeing you compete there, it really put that show as equivalent to like Olympia for me. So those 2 shows are kind of always on the radar for me every year, no matter what at this point. And as you know, the Arnold's a quick turnaround from Olympia. So it makes it hard sometimes to come off Olympia, have maybe a month or 2 of some downtime and not a lot of time. And then you have to kind of get right back into the prep mode mentally, physically with going to the Arnold. But then if you don't win those or qualify for Olympia at the Arnold, you're going to have to pick a show. And in the last few years, it's been the Indy Pro, winning that. And so obviously this year throws a whole wrench into what's going on in the show world. Having a chance to compete early was great, but now it's like, okay, what's going on with the O qualifications? What shows are even going to happen? I know a lot have moved to later in the year, but so yeah, we're faced with a lot of what ifs at this point. And then like you said, managing it with the businesses and you don't eventually, if you do too many shows or compete too long, your body's going to burn out. And that's another thing you got to play in the cards is are we going to try to do the shows in a bunch at least to try to keep them together within a month or 2. That way you have a little downtime and kind of reset and then go into what would be Olympia prep.
What was the game plan though, Steve? Were you going to Australia after or no?
That was on my radar. It really was, because obviously everything started happening in the world on that side of the world in December. So I was kind of watching the news, a little bit of what's going on with the virus and what's going on that side of the world being shut down. And so I had intentions of doing the Arnold Australia, but I was really waiting to see because I didn't have a good feeling of what is happening with really China, and I knew Australia's not very far from China, so it could be affected there. So kind of going into the Arnold, I didn't still submit my contract to Australia just because I didn't have a good feeling about it. But this year the plan was to do Arnold, Ohio, then go to Arnold, Australia, potentially either win both, however that was going to work out. And then, from there, it was just kind of let's see what happens. If we have to go to New York, do New York, let's do that. But then the year starts getting real long if you start going into May and June and having to turn right into an Olympia prep from there.
So with far as business, like what you have a lot of things going on. I know you've have a lot of different ventures. So let's talk a little bit about that. I know Amanda's heavily involved in a lot of your business. I know she works alongside you, which is, we all have that person. Carrie was she created a lot of that opportunity for me because she was like secondary to, she was basically like me in my business. But Amanda was in Vegas and now you've migrated her to Dallas, right? I was hoping you were going to end up in Las Vegas, to be honest.
That would have been cool.
That was it's something we talked about, but I mean at the time I had full-time career with working with the city of Dallas as a firefighter and stuff, so that was really hard to leave, being so vested in the time and I had in that. It wasn't something that could just easily be moved, so we decided to make the move for her to come here. She still has ties there. Mom Latona's there and her brother. So, hopefully we get back a little bit more and to see you, your family there too now. But, working together with her is we love spending a lot of our time together, and we do everything together. Ultimately, she's established her life and business in fitness as with I. So they really just tie together and we've decided to really keep what we do in the fitness world. And kind of, you've been a model in that for us. I've seen what you've done, with kind of taking what you've done as a platform, branding yourself so well, doing supplements and everything, and you've just taken what you've done from on stage and converted that into businesses. And for us, for her, it was like, let's use your likeness, your following, and create a good product, something that you would really back. And that went into Booty Queen Apparel, which we did, that had a lot of success getting on Shark Tank and getting a lot of mainstream eyes. And so that's been a huge thing that we've done. A lot of stress, a lot of learning curves with that, and it's pretty much been her and I doing the majority of it. And then from that, we were able to get some shows. We got a handful of bodybuilding shows we promote now. And then, we have some other opportunities coming up with potentially getting involved in a gym chain, the Carbon Culture with, Brendan Curry and Brent Laffey is another option that we're really kind of looking at and doing. So there's a lot of things that have come of it. We're just, being smart, and obviously being an athlete, being with like Allmax for about 5 years now. So there's ways to generate revenue, and it doesn't all come from stage, as you know.
I think it's kind of cool though, Steve. Hold on, Dave. I just want to ask you guys are booked together for appearances. Like when you travel, Amanda comes with you, right? Doesn't it make it so much easier?
Oh my gosh, if I was on my own or she was gone for the weekend, I mean, it would be hard. And we're so thankful for, Allmax and that we're able to do that,
Do you ever do separate appearances or not so much?
And not so much. If it, and that's kind of cool because we're like the package deal, and they're able to sell it to the stores that they're promoting to, or events. Like, hey, if there's something going on, we'll be there. And obviously, I appeal more to the guys. She appeals more to the girls, even though it sounds kind of weird. It works out that way. I mean, you'd think I'd have a line of girls, she'd have a line of guys, but it's kind of vice versa. And now, especially a lot of fit couple stuff out there. You see a lot of couples that are, that people that are couples come to us too. So it's really cool.
I'm glad you brought up Shark Tank, because I was going to bring that up actually. It was kind of like a big deal for someone from our world to make it to the mainstream TV. And how much did that help your business with you and Amanda to be on that show?
It put us in a good light in the public eye. I think it made us a lot more recognizable, and for people like, oh, I've seen that show, and yeah, you're the guy I've seen on Shark Tank. So that's cool to see us having a retail store in one of the malls here in Dallas.
Oh, nice.
And so people kind of recognize us on that aspect, but it was good. A ton of exposure. I mean, the first airing we had, I think they said close to 7 million people viewed that episode. So that's, to get some light in a mainstream setting for the bodybuilding world, I felt was great. And tried to be a good representation for what a bodybuilder meathead would be, if somebody that could speak fairly well and look good and not just be a dumb guy up there looking kind of pretty.
Yeah, you guys made us look good on that show. I just wanted to say congrats on that, even though it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Whose power move was it to tell you to wear a tank top and walk in into
I think that might have been my mom's idea. She probably said no shirt, but no, I think it was one of those things we wanted to make it was short story on that. We actually filmed that right after Olympia, 4 years ago. We went right from Vegas to LA because that following week is when they were filming that season. So we, it was great because I still had a tan on a little bit, was really lean. So I was like, oh, this is going to work out great for me. So yeah, we did the shorts, t-shirt, tank top, and we definitely made an impact with the Sharks. And when they first saw us, they're like, holy crap, look at these two. They're just, not coming in a business shirt. They're like, what do they have? So it was pretty cool.
Awesome.
I think Amanda, and this is no disrespect, I think she is like the original butt girl. Like, before now, right?
She's the OG, and she's the first one that do the booty pose in the mirror that I all copy now. And it's funny because she gets a little bit, she gets, I'm not going to say upset in a bad way, but she's like, I was the first one to do that. Like, I started that.
She sure was. She sure was. But so, Steve, your physique, you maintain I think one of the best off-season physiques, okay? And that was always my goal when I was training is, you're booked for guest posings, which is a rarity in this world today, right? A lot of guys don't do guest posing. How are you maintaining your off-season weight you have to be close to 300 pounds all the time, and you're in great shape. How do you maintain that? Do you leave it mostly to your diet, the regimen, or the training, or both, or is it genetics? I mean, what is an effort for you to stay looking so good all the time? And talk a little bit about how that affects your guest posing schedule.
I would say it's a combination of all of those a little bit in there. I think like you had that understanding, and you always did a great job when it came to, you always look good for guest posings. You always look like a bodybuilder. And that's kind of my mentality. Like if I'm going to be a bodybuilder, professional bodybuilder that's getting paid to be a bodybuilder, I want to look like it, not just a big kind of sloppy guy. So it's not, I'm pretty regimented in my diet. Like I stick to, I'd say kind of an 80-20. If I'll eat normally what I normally would eat when I prep. If I want something else, I'll eat it really without a lot of disregard for feeling like I cheated bad. I think use the off season time to go out to dinner with friends, my wife, get to enjoy some normalcy of life, normal things. But I still stick to being a bodybuilder because, hey, that's what I'm getting paid to do. And that's represent what I'm doing. So that's kind of my, I train hard year round. It's not like I train just for, 12 weeks before a show. I really train pretty much year round. I take occasional breaks where I take a week off here or there, or maybe 4 or 5 days, but that plays a role in it as well. And then genetics. I think genetics does play a role. I'm not a super lean guy genetically, but I'm not a guy that holds a ton of weight. And I usually hold my weight kind of in the mid to high 280s. If I start creeping up toward 300, my body starts saying, the knees, the ankles, the joints start saying that's not too fun. So I hold that weight even in the off season. And then as I diet, I kind of recomp really well where I'll almost put on muscle, drop body fat. My weight stays in the mid 280s as I diet now. And it feels so much better that way.
That was what I was just going to ask you. Dave, you didn't realize this, but he pretty much competes like what he weighs all the time.
I was just going to ask. So that's about how much you weigh, 280 on stage?
The Olympia last year, I was right around 284, 285 on stage. And this year at the Arnold's like 282. Jeez. So, yeah.
Wow. Unreal.
So
and you're making the improvements, Steve. I mean, how do you like really look at your physique and say, okay, these are how I need to fill in these holes? Who's criticizing you the most? And, especially like when you're looking at your back poses, and we all know, right, that you have to have the good back and the good legs. I mean, you seem to, and you have all the body parts. The shoulders are just crazy. So you have to be able to balance everything around like certain body parts that are like easily attained for you, right? So you've had to work your ass off to get certain body parts. So who's really the eye for you? Are you able to see the holes that you're trying to fill to be better on stage?
I'm pretty critical of myself, knowing, okay, I know I need to improve this, and I don't like make it a negative where I beat myself up about it. I'm like, okay, I know I need to do the work. And I put a little extra effort or time into those body parts. I know I don't have to overly train my shoulders, like you said. So I'm going to put that time and effort into training some back or some chest, a little more effort or time into that. And then when I start working with Gina Davis for my training and now doing my nutrition, she really married those two well. As far as making sure my diet was on point to what my training was. And she was able to really throw a wrench into what my normal, I think as a bodybuilder, you kind of get in a routine of kind of the same thing over and over, your same sets, same rep schemes and all that. And she really applied a lot of different things as far as, drop sets, supersets, different tempos, and really, I think switched it up enough for my body to say, wait a second, like I need to adapt, I need to grow. And that really helped. And learning some new techniques for what works for my body really helped as well. And I think you have to evolve in a bodybuilder that way, constantly thinking about learning and not be like an ego, like I know what to do and nobody could tell me. So if you're willing to learn, you're going to make changes for the better.
I used to see you squat like 600 pounds and do, 200-pound dumbbell presses. Is that still going on, or did you change your ways?
That's still, it still floats in here a little bit. Like, I took recently, I think I squatted maybe 500 for 12 or something. So I still lift pretty heavy. I don't try to go crazy. When I was 18, 19, 20, I was doing that. I really didn't know how strong I was. I was just kind of keeping up with Justin Harris at the time. And it was, he would always say, like, he goes, "You're stupid strong. You don't even know how strong you are." And I'm like, "I'm just keeping up with you, But I think that's what having a good training partner sometimes helps when you got a strong training partner. It pushes you to do things. But I train a lot smarter now. You have to. I think if you're going to do this a long time, it's a lot of wear and tear on the body, but you have to train that I know that I have to lift heavy. My body type likes to get worked with heavy weight, but I have to do it smart, and not just throw it around, but control it.
I know, but let me ask you, what's heavy to you? Because that's the viewers have a perception of what's heavy. So like if we're going to do chest, like how heavy of dumbbells are you doing for repetitions?
Some of the gyms I train have to go up to 150. So I'm maxed out at 150. I'll do those. But some of the gyms I've been to, or if they have 200-pound dumbbells, I'll creep up to about 180. If I'm feeling frisky, I'll throw 200s my last set and feel good. I'm not doing it like as an ego lift. Like I kind of joke around and say I'm not an Instagram bodybuilder. I just don't do a set for Instagram and that's how I train. Like if I do it on Instagram, I do it the following week, when I don't film it and so on and so forth. So I may do. I've been doing a lot more dumbbell stuff, not so much on the bars. I feel a lot more. I feel it helps my shoulders, so I do, like I said, a lot more dumbbell stuff. I may do, probably on average 160 to 180s on my heavy sets of dumbbells. So I still lift pretty heavy.
Do you train by yourself, Steve, or do you have a training partner?
I have a training partner. Yeah. My buddy Max Fairchild, Jay probably knows him. Him and I train together.
Oh, cool.
He don't keep up with you like that crazy weight, does he?
Not for chest. There's some body parts he's strong. He loves training legs. It's funny. One of the running jokes we have, like if he goes out and gets a little crazy with some friends or his wife on a weekend, and he comes in Monday, he's kind of sluggish, and Tuesday we have legs. I say, "You went out, didn't you?" And he goes, "Yeah, I went out, had a little fun." I was like, because he loves punishing himself for having a little too much fun. So I know when we do legs, he gets after legs. So that's always a fun one.
Compare Dallas, you're living in Dallas or outside of Dallas, comparable to like growing up in Michigan. I mean, do you miss Michigan? I mean, you must miss your family, and I'm going to ask you, when does a family plan to move to Texas?
I mean, definitely the family is probably the biggest part. Family, friends that you grow up with, you miss seeing them, and we're able to get to there at least once or twice a year to go visit for around holidays, and they do the same. They visit probably Texas a lot more, which is nice. They comparatively, Detroit, Dallas, the Dallas is a lot nicer of a city, a lot more economically evolved than Detroit, but a lot of great people in Detroit. And so you do miss that kind of growing up. And it's always great to go back to the old powerhouses when I'm there and seeing all the old stomping grounds. But I'd say one of if we have a kid on the way at some point, we've talked about it, my wife and I know Mama Kook is right there as soon as Amanda's pregnant, but it's definitely in the works for them to come down. They don't like being away from us.
How do you miss the weather?
Yeah, exactly. Once you leave snow, as Jay knows, you never want to go back to it. It's nice to see.
Yeah, but don't get me wrong. It snowed in Dallas or something at some point, they told me.
We get like 1 or 2 days of winter, maybe a little bit of snow. I mean, and it goes away the next day. We don't get, enough to say, "Oh, that's cool," and I don't want to see it again.
It happens in Vegas. Don't get, people think Vegas is heat all the time, but it's not the case. So Steve, what are you guys doing for fun? Like now, you transit, you're not competing, like you're not every day on a schedule for the show. I'm sure you're still on a schedule, but like, what do you guys do for you take vacations, or what are you guys kind of doing to kind of release? Because it sounds like you work when you're not training, and when you're not competing, it's, you're still working too. But right. What do you guys do to kind of release and try to have some quality time?
For her and I, as you know, when you travel a lot, sometimes when you're home, it's really nice to kind of be home. And that's kind of the vacation. Like when I get home and I'm like, I just want to sit on the couch and not really, I want to be home. A weekend that we're not traveling is that's vacation sometimes. So we enjoy definitely being together, relaxing. Like we got a pool that we could relax at, and that's always nice. But we like, her and I we love music. So we love going to concerts, festivals, that kind of stuff. We enjoy, going out for that kind of R&R for us. And for me, I like getting out with the car sometimes. You know, I got a group of guys. We go have a little fun, maybe driving a little too fast sometimes. It's fun to a little bit of adrenaline rush separation from, you know, cars and guns are my separation from bodybuilding. So that's what I enjoy.
Yeah, you like that hardcore music, huh? That hardcore rock.
We go a little heavy on the rock, and we like some electronic EDM stuff too. That's always a good time.
Yeah, good, man.
No rap like Jay.
Yeah, Jay's got their soul in him too.
That's funny. So, so what's the game plan now? I mean, as far as what's your mindset is the contests, and you know, we're all kind of in the same boat right now, right? So how are you utilizing your time more sparingly right now?
I think like you probably know.
Are you able to train is the question.
What's that?
Are you able to train?
Yes, I am. So that's been a huge thing. I have access with a couple friends that own facilities. I'm able to get in, and that's a huge part of keeping some sanity right now. I know for me, and I know that a lot of people are inconvenienced and struggling with the fact that they don't have anywhere to train and they got to do home workouts and stuff like that, which I feel for you. And that's one of the reasons it's been stressful time for me as a promoter, having to move 2 shows because of just as a fairness to competitors. I think it makes sense if they don't have access to the gyms and people are afraid to kind of get together in groups right now. We've had to move some of the shows. So I mean, it's not about like just sitting around and doing nothing when we're home right now. I mean, I think I'm actually doing more work with trying to manage the promotional side of things, and with businesses kind of at a halt of how to kind of pivot some things and continue the body or the businesses to keep moving, with everything at a standstill.
Because you had a show in April that you postponed, right? The Michigan show was when? It was going to be last weekend, I think.
April 4th. Yeah, it was going to be last weekend. And then the Dallas show was May 23rd. And that was going to be our big 5th year anniversary. And we're moving that to September because even if it opens up May 1st, 4 weeks or 3 weeks to prep for a show, realistically, it's just not going to happen for people. And I think really shows might really start happening like August is really when probably shows are going to be successful because people are still going to be a little bit leery of getting together and social distancing. And so it's a different world we're approaching here. It's kind of scary, crazy, and unsure.
Are people staying in there off? Like you notice the streets are a lot.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Big time. I could see in the last week a lot more people venturing out. I think people are getting stir crazy and roads are getting a little bit busier, but definitely the whole panic has gone down. The stores aren't emptied like they were a few weeks ago, and people are a little more normal thinking. So that's always good.
Yeah, same here.
How about in Vegas? Is Vegas?
You know what? It's very quiet, Steve, and I've been making do with everything, and I'm super busy with all my businesses and thankfully it's, we're just trying to get as much, the YouTube is kind of one of those awkward things because we're shooting a lot of people training and, now it's just, we're trying to reach out to the people we've been wanting to get on and who we, obviously who our closest people are to start. So we're able to get Flex on and you are secondary to, what we want to do this week, which is awesome. We had a whole bucket list of people and so we had the first week and you were one of the top people.
Oh, thank you.
To get on there. And just, we've known each other a long time and you always text me before the shows, right? And you're like, I'm ready, right? You're telling me I'm coming.
Yeah.
And, I've seen you at the Olympia bigger than everybody else, right? And sometimes I know as the bigger guy, it's hard when the smaller guys end up getting calls because we look at, the overpowering physiques and you have a lot of great balance. So what I want to ask you is like your dream call out for you, like who would you want to stand next to, like out of all the people? You can include me in there too, but like, would that be something that you like want a dream call out against like the best of the best? Because, your height is a little different from a lot of the bodybuilders. I mean, you stand out on stage. You got tremendous width and you got the height too, but you also have the crazy balance. So like if you could stand next to anyone in any era, who would that be, would you think?
First, when you talk about when I text you before the show and stuff like that, like I'm ready, and a lot of it's when people start asking you predictions, and you start hearing there's a lot of chatter about some other guys, and Jay, you always throw my name in the hat, so I appreciate that and thank you. It's
high expectations for you, Steve. No pressure, no pressure.
Hey, when Jay said that, gives me a little boost, and I'm gonna, that's like, okay, a little confident booster. Jay's got my back. I'm in this. Let's go. So I get a war hat on, and I get my mental state right. I'm ready to do battle with these guys, and it's not like we're gonna take things lightly. So I go into shows with the right mindset, and you have to. But as far as a dream call out, I think, gosh, I never saw Marcus Rule in person on stage. I know you competed against him. Yeah. So it'd almost be like, get the big guys together. Let's see how, like, modern day big guys compared with some of the older school big guys like yourself. Say, like, you, Marcus Rule, Dennis Wolf, me, like, kind of let's do a big guy call out. Because hey, people love the freaks. Yeah, some of these smaller guys look amazing. Your Bonax, Dexter, those guys look, they're incredible physiques, but when you see them like in person, they're not really that impressive. They're kind of short, and they look kind of normal. But then you see some of the bigger guys, bigger bodies, like that guy's huge. Like I get that all the time. Somebody sees me in person, they're like, "You look way bigger in person than you do in pictures," and I'm like, "Well, I'll take that as a compliment." But Yeah,
Steve, you're like the ultimate go to like a supplement shop or a bodybuilding show. Meet this guy because you're so big in person. Like you just have that. And you're always in shape, so it's even better than that. But I'm going to tell you a cool Marcus Rule story. Okay, I've never told this story. So in 2000, I won the Night of Champions. It was, I competed there, and Paul Dillette was my neighbor, and he had won the year prior. And I remember him telling me, "I'm winning this show. I don't care." And Paul Dillette was like, he was way upper echelon compared to me at the time. And I'm like, man, I got to go against Paul Dillette. He won last year, and the guy's massive, whatever. So I was training like crazy, and, I got really in great shape for that show. I ended up about 260, but I ended up pumping up backstage with Mike Matarazzo, who was like another idol of mine. And I remember him saying to me, he had been in Toronto the week before. That's when the shows were like back to back. So Toronto Pro was the week prior, and Mike competed. He's like, dude, you got to see Marcus Rule. Like, he won it last week in Toronto, and no one's touching this guy. And I'm like back there pumping up with Mike, being like, oh, shit, am I going to be able to stand next to? So I come out, and then I end up winning the show, and Marcus, I think he got second or something in that show. And I was like, damn, I beat Marcus Rule. And he was way bigger than me, but it was just the balance was the difference, right? Right. And he wasn't as hard from the back. That was the only downside of Marcus a lot. Although we competed in Austria, and it was very, like, he got third that year to me and Ronnie on one of the Grand Prix the year I won the Olympia. And like, he was an absolute freak, and he's still big. If you see him now, like I go to FIBO every year, but I remember thinking the same thing, like, man, this guy is just outrageously big. He was about your height too. And he was just super wide, but he had just, people were a little judgmental towards his physique, whether it was, balanced or not. But I think, you're like the bodybuilder where you have that balance and you're plugging away, moving up. But I think what's going to happen with you, and this is my prediction, is you're going to hit it that one time that's just going to propel you from what you've placed best at the Olympia to right there, Sure. And, that's my expectation. I mean, into the Olympia this year, I'm still putting you as one of the front runners to walk in there, because let's look at the track record. I mean, you've been consistent. I mean, we talk about consistent bodybuilders. You've been really, really consistent. And that's the key to, a guy that ends up becoming the best of the best, right?
Right. Absolutely. And that's, you were a kind of set the standard on that as well, as being consistent of, always bringing a great package. That's pretty, the Rule story is freaking awesome, because I that's one of the things too. I think people, with nowadays, with pictures that circulate before shows, and the way, so you see some guys, like when they have the whole camel crew post the bathroom picture, that they look like they're 500 pounds. you have to shut that off as a competitor, as somebody that's going to be competing against him. Because I know, probably hearing Rule was one of the guys, like, looks insane. It messes with you mentally. You're like, shit, this guy's going to out muscle me by 100 pounds, and I feel like a nothing next to him. But I know when I get backstage and I start seeing the guys, and I'm like, okay, like, I got this, like I'm my size is going to hold, and my condition feels good. I mean, as long as you go into a show confident, you're going to do well. I think that's a big part of it. But I'm with you. I know that I'm right there, kind of. I feel like I'm 95% I've figured out the equation, and just a little more tweak, I think, overall. And we bring it. I feel like I could be a contender to be this year. Actually, 2019 was the first year I said to myself, I felt like I belonged, like in that top 5. I felt like, I belong there, and I feel like I could do something there,
Steve, you're still young, only 34. How much longer you want to do this? I mean, I know, Jay, when you first started, said, okay, by the time I'm 30 years old, I'm retired. We know how that went. How much longer in your head do you plan on doing this bodybuilding thing?
I want to beat Dexter. No, wait. Not a chance. I'd probably be right around, I got some gas in the tank, I always say, and I'd be right around probably Jay. My goal is to win an Arnold or an Olympia, to really carry one of those titles, and kind of go from there. I'm really just going to listen to my body. I'm not going to force things. If I get to a point where I'm like, man, I'm too beat up to go forward, then we're going to listen to it. But going to play it smart. And at this point, it's kind of be more strategic on how I'm training, how I'm shows I'm doing, all that kind of stuff. So that's where I'm at.
Awesome.
Jay, have any more good questions for him?
No, I just, like I mentioned, Steve, like, people can, obviously I want to put my signature on your guest posing ability, because I think you're one of the few guys that, I know you've been doing a lot. So how can people get a hold of you for these guest appearances? I mean, how are you booking stuff? I
think most of it, best way is through just kind of social media or through my email, just steve@stevekuclo.com. I enjoy doing those. Like, I enjoy meeting fans. I know a lot of guys don't, or they're kind of like, they rather be hermits and kind of tucked away and just show up at shows. But like I like getting out there, meeting fans, and spreading a good word of what we're doing in our sport. I think it's a very unique sport that needs to get good eyes. Like, I'm excited about this Athleticon that's going on with, that there's going to be a lot more mainstream eyeballs on what we're doing. So I think the sport's going in a good direction, and I'm excited to be a part of it. And I'm excited that you're still as heavily involved as you are, because you're such a ambassador for what the sport is,
Have you heard?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jay.
You heard anything about qualification? Anything with the qualification? Is there any updated news? I mean, I'm on the outside. So
for Athleticon.
For any kind of qualification process, with the shows being kind of on hold and kind of postponed.
I haven't heard anything. I know NPC made some changes with, like, the national level shows being, they've kind of loosened some of the qualifications, and I would assume maybe Olympia might have to do that as well, with only having a handful of guys right now that are qualified, and there only being a couple shows before the Olympia that are actually qualifiers. And they may have to do an invite style, kind of like the Arnold, or have some kind of prerequisite like the Athleticon's doing, where you kind of have been in a top 10 at Olympia before. And so it's going to be interesting. But I'm excited. I think it'll be I think at that time, August, September, people are going to be starving for an expo or a good show to go to. So it's going to be great.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to get Dan Solomon on, Dave. We're gonna have to get Dan.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I think they're probably going to get some, I'd say in the next few weeks, get a little bit better picture of what is actually happening. If quarantines are still going to be extended, if people are able to train, if they're going to let big expos or festivals stuff happen. I mean, that's going to all be a factor, I think, in everything that's going forward, at least this year.
Would you like to go to Athleticon personally?
Yes. Yeah. I think at this point, Athleticon is definitely on the radar. I think if you're going to do the Olympia, it just makes sense to go another 3-4 weeks in prep and just kind of coast into what would be the Athleticon. And I think it's going to be a great opportunity being the first year, and I'm 95% sure I'm going to be doing that. So
awesome. Any last word, Jay?
No, you have a YouTube channel, Steve, or?
I do, but it's not as active as I'd like it to be. But just if you I got a lot of old school stuff back when YouTube just started. I put a ton of videos out training, and I was like, I'll just put it up. A lot of those heavy lifts when I was like 19, 20, 21 years old. So it's been that long, but I still put some stuff up here and there, and I should be more active on it. I know you are.
It's a lot of work.
I'm going to ask you one last question. What's your most impressive lift?
My most.
What would you think? Do you have a deadlift, a bench press, or a squat that was most impressive for you at a certain age? I squatted 700 one time.
I was up there. I think high sixes one time. I did it for a few reps after a shift on the ambulance. I went and trained the following morning, and after being up for 24 hours, and I squatted like 6 something for a handful of reps, but. Actually, probably my most impressive. There's a funny little story that goes with this. It was in Arnold, probably close to 10 years ago. About 10 years ago, I was at the animal cage, and they were doing a squat contest. How many times can you do 405? As many times, and Derek Farnsworth was in there, and he's a squatting machine.
Well, he only has to move this far.
It's not fair. It's not fair for a guy that's 6 foot. So he was one of the guys, myself, and a few other guys, and we had to do 405 as many times as in. So he went like he did it 25 times, and I was like, oh my God, this is horrible. And to preface the story, the night before, when everybody's at the Arnold that Friday night, everybody's getting together and had a few cocktails and hanging out the Hyatt bar. So I was guilty of that, and the next day I didn't feel so hot in the morning, but I had to go squat. So I ended up doing it like 30 or 31 times, and that was not fun. But that was probably my most impressive. I probably would really have a hard time doing that 31 times again.
Derek, we're gonna have to razz Derek about that.
Yeah,
I'm gonna tag him in this video.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much. We kept you for a while, Steve. We really appreciate this interview. Jay, thank you so much for taking the time. It was great catching up with you both. And then best of luck in this upcoming season, right, Jay?
Yeah, well, I'd love to get some. I'd love to be able to do this again at some point. Maybe before the Olympia or whatever, man. It's I want to get your mindset a little bit as it's closer. Right now you're a little relaxed, but as you should be. So keep focused, keep healthy. That's the most important thing.
Thank you. No, it's always an honor, Jay, to be on here with you and to you to consider me to be on your show and always put me in your favorites to look out for before shows. So I appreciate support over the years. You've been a big inspiration to me, and I know most of the bodybuilding world in itself. And keep up the fantastic work yourself. And thank you.
Awesome. All right, you guys. Thank you so much for being on the show, you guys. Very appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.